Today, we're going to be simplifying complex fractions with the use of a least common denominator, or LCD. So, what is a complex fraction? A complex fraction is a fraction that has fractions inside its numerator and denominator. So, an example of that might be this: a divided by b, all divided by c over d. I have a fraction in my numerator and a fraction in my denominator. The nice thing about complex fractions is that they can always be simplified down to just regular fractions. One numerator, one denominator. So how do we do that? One way that we can do that is through the use of the LCD, or least common denominator. Specifically, we look for the least common denominator of our numerator and our denominator. So the least common denominator, in this case, needs a factor of b from up top and a factor of d from the bottom. So my least common denominator here is b times d. And if I want to get rid of these denominators, I'm going to multiply this by 1. But I'm going to choose a particular form of 1, and that form of 1 is going to be my least common denominator, b times d, on both top and bottom. So we're multiplying by 1, so that I don't change my fraction. But I've multiplied by a clever form of 1 because I get some cancellations. On top, these factors of b cancel out. On the bottom, these factors of d cancel out. And therefore, what I can do is I can multiply whatever's left over, and this will give me a times d on top and c times b on the bottom. So I took my complex fraction that had fractions inside it and turned it into just a regular fraction. So how does that work if we want to do this with some numbers? Well, let's take an example. Maybe I'll do 12 over 5 divided by 4 over 3, let's say. Well, I want to find my least common denominator, just like we did before. What is the least common denominator of 5 and 3? Well, the least common denominator of 5 and 3 is 15. Therefore, I'm going to multiply the top by 15 and the bottom by 15, because I can't change it. It's still just 1. 5 and 15, this cancels, leaving me with a 3 left over. 3 and 15 cancel out, leaving me with a 5 left over. So 12 times 3, this gives me 36. 4 times 5, this gives me 20. And if I wanted, I could also cancel out common factors here. So it looks like there's a factor of 4 on both top and bottom. So I could simplify this down to 9 over 5, which would be my fully simplified result. But 36 over 20 is what happens if you just do the multiplication and you don't simplify all the way. So I'd leave it here at 9 over 5.